There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
This is very exciting. Raymond from Maryland is back on my channel. He was here for a bite-sized book chat late in 2021, and now he's back to give us some more recommendations for Black History Month. Raymond, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
And are you suffering from any hangovers from the New Year's festivities?
No, not at all.
Are you drinking during this conversation?
I am completely sober. Just staying hydrated with some high quality H2O, as Adam Sandler said in the Water Boy.
There's I'm so off the beaten track. I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about. I've heard of Adam Sandler at least. Raymond is involved in a worldwide book club called Black Men Read, the Black Men Read Book Club, and he is you're the head honcho for the Goodreads component of that, right?
Yes, correct.
And what's the book under discussion this month? We're filming this on January 6th. What are you discussing in January?
We are reading the 1619 Project, the book version, and we actually split it into 2 months. So we started in December, finishing up in January.
Oh, yeah, and I have that. I'm not going to ask you if you're enjoying it, but is it good?
Yeah, it's very good. I read some of the original magazine, but not the whole thing. It's an expanded version of that. I think they did a very good job with it, especially with it having so many authors in the book, and it's keeping that same kind of flow, and, chapters are speaking to each other kind of in a way. So, yeah.
Well, I am vaguely aware of all the yahoos and idiots in American political culture that are opposed to it. So without even having read it yet, I'm for it. But maybe that's one that I will consider for my Black History Month TBR, actually. And do you know what your February pick is?
Not yet.
Well, if you have arrived at a choice before I put this video up, you can let me know and I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. And that club is open to Black men from around the world, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, great. So I asked Raymond after his fabulous debut appearance on my channel to come back and for a longer chat to talk about works of, I think you have some fiction and non?
I think this is mostly nonfiction.
Yeah, and that's great.
It's all nonfiction.
Oh, well, no problem at all. That's great. It is, after all, Black History Month. It's not Black Fiction Month. So to recommend some books, because he's so widely read in this area. So without further ado, tell us about your first pick, Raymond.
So first pick, this book came out last year, 2021. And this is actually a good compliment, I think, to the 1619 Project book. And people probably have heard of it. 400 Souls, edited by Ibram Kendi and Keisha Blain, 2 historians. The subtitle is A Community History of African America from 1619 to 2019. And so this is made up of 80 writers plus 10 poets. So wow. 90 writers all together.
So then it's an anthology of fiction and poetry?
Nonfiction and poetry.
Nonfiction, yes. And poetry. Well, that's a very interesting mix.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So why are you particularly recommending this one?
It covered a lot of information that I personally didn't know about. I've read a lot of Black history before, but they covered like figures back in 1700s, 1800s, people I was not familiar with. There was a lady named Lucy, I think her name was Lucy Perry, a Black woman who fought for her freedom rights, and I forget what state she was in. Each essay in this book is very short. They're like 5 pages, give or take, right? And they cover 5 years. So each writer covered a 5-year period of time, but they covered like one topic that happened in that 5 years.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. And so how they structured it was, if I remember correctly, they did a group of 10 essays and then a poem was like the page break between, or the the section break between the first era to the second era, and it goes from 1619 to 2019. So
That sounds incredible. I am very familiar just from, watching the news or being on Twitter with Ibram Kendi, but do you know anything about Keisha Blain?
So yes, she's a historian as well. I actually have a.
She's the author of the new. Sorry, she's the author of the new Fannie Lou Hamer biography.
Yeah, I have that, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, well, I want to have you. I think I pre-reserved a spot for you to come and talk about that when you've read it, because I'm really interested in Fannie Lou Hamer. So I'm doubly sold on this book. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, I know she's written some other books, but I hadn't read anything of hers, of her solo work. And both Ibram Kendi and Keisha Blain write essays in the book.
It's a tome. It's over 500 pages, right? But the fact that the essays and stuff are short, it's actually does sound really appealing.
Yeah, and it doesn't really. I mean, it looks like a standard thick book. I mean, it's not super crazy, but
not terribly intimidating.
Right. Yeah.
Now, would you recommend that one for somebody who doesn't know a whole lot about Black history, or would it be better as a follow-up once you've got kind of the rudiments of all the issues in history?
I think anybody could, a novice or an expert could really get into this, because I mean, I can guarantee, even if you were an expert in Black history, there's something in here you would not know. Or quite a few things there you would not know. So even a novice would be fine, because it's not dry at all. Anything. It's very quick.
Accessible.
Yeah, accessible. Yeah.
Okay.
And even though it's nonfiction, right, there are some essays in there that are they're technically historical fiction, because there was one essay that I remember by Donna Brazil, who wrote this essay about Richard Allen, who was a bishop in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And it was basically telling his story about how he left his church. So he was in a predominantly white church, and it was segregated. And so he left that church to form this denomination. And so basically in that essay, that the author is writing in his voice as if he's telling what happened. And so it almost reads like it's a first person account, but it's not. It's just someone else writing what they think he would have said.
Very interesting. While you were telling me all that, I was paying very close attention, but I was also checking out the new Fannie Lou Hamer biography, and it is only, with not including footnotes and stuff, it's about 140 pages. So I am definitely reading it in February for Black History Month.
It's definitely really short. Yeah, I was surprised about how short it was.
I'm so interested in her. Fantastic. What's your next pick or next recommendation?
Oh, the next one. So this book is much thicker than the last one.
Oh, good.
And this is Black Reconstruction in America by W.E.B. Du Bois. This is an older book. That
is a tome.
It's 750, close to 750. Published in 1935 by Du Bois, and I read this in 2020. This is one of these books where I wanted to read, but I was kind of intimidated by the size. And open it up, the print is very small.
Yeah,
everything. And so this is one of Du Bois's less read books. His most famous one is The Souls of Black Folks, which is short, much shorter.
Yes.
Yes, but this one's really good. Just basically his telling of what Reconstruction, which was the period after the Civil War in America, what it was about. This was actually a very revolutionary book for its time, because at the moment when he was writing or getting this published, like the narrative was a more of a racist description of that Reconstruction was a failure. And so he was one of the first historians to say, no, that's not so fast. This is what really happened. Black people in the South and white legislators had a crucial impact in creating these governments in the South and these institutions in the South that we still have today. So it was a fascinating book.
You are very well read in this area. What do you think about this one for somebody who might be a bit more of a novice? Would this be one to work your way up to, or could you jump into this one?
I would say not for a novice. This is a definitely denser text. It's not hard to read, but it's he gets into a lot of detail. And so, some of that might intimidate people and you might get bored with it, that type of thing. But
can you recommend one that somebody should start with about the Reconstruction and then go on to get all the minutiae?
Yeah, sure. So I'm glad you asked that, because what got me to reading this book was I read a book called Stony the Road, which I have. Let's go pick it up.
Great.
Stony the Road by Henry Louis Gates Jr. I believe this came out in 2019. The subtitle is Reconstruction, White Supremacy, and the Rise of Jim Crow. And this was like a companion book to a PBS documentary that came out at the same time. I didn't watch it, but I did read the book.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good introductory.
Yeah, because generally these books tend to be kind of survey type things, and good, like you said, good introduction. He mentioned that this book was what got him into the topic of Reconstruction. So
those are a good pairing, but do the Gates first. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because he covers the period maybe like 20, 30 years after Reconstruction too. So it's a much longer period of time in that book too.
I am actually very interested in the Reconstruction era and don't know much about it, so I would probably start with the Gates, but that big tome does sound fascinating. So yeah, great.
Next book I have is Hattie Mcdaniel, just biography by Jill Watts. For those who don't know who Hattie Mcdaniel was, she was an actress in Hollywood, and she's most known for her portrayal in the movie Gone with the Wind as the character named Mammy. And so this book was very good. I didn't know that much about her outside of the movie, right? It basically tells the story about how, she got into Hollywood. She came from a entertaining family. Like there were her brother, I think one of her brothers, and I'm not sure if another sibling, but they were all did minstrel shows in the early 20th century. And so she actually played a Mammy character even in the minstrel when she was doing minstrel shows. And that was in the book. Jill Watts talks about how basically like when she played those roles, they were important to her development into the character she played in Gone with the Wind.
The subtitle is intriguing: Black Ambition, White Hollywood.
Yeah.
How long did her career extend?
I believe it went up to roughly the early 50s, maybe.
And you've written a fabulously detailed review back in the summer of 2020, which I will link to.
She died in 52, so.
Okay, so you don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Not even I remember. Okay.
It was very good. She kind of, she talks a lot about her career after Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
And how it was such a struggle getting different roles, right? And that at that time she was kind of pigeonholed into playing roles that were always maids or servants or slave women and so forth. And then at the same time, she got a lot of criticism from people in the African American community because of those roles. And it was like, why can't you aspire to something better? But that's not what she was given. She didn't have a lot of choice.
And her famous rebuttal to the criticism that she got for playing such a subservient maid role in the movie was, I'd rather play a maid than be a maid. But I think from the synopsis here, the biography kind of adds a whole bunch of nuance and biographical detail to that famous quote. So
yeah. And she actually did work as a maid many times. So even while she was in Hollywood, when the money wasn't coming in. Yeah. Now, another book, all of these are really great, but this book I always am amazed about. I did not know of this figure before getting this book, but this book is Jane Crow, The Life of Pauli Murray, by Rosalind Rosenberg. She was a lot of hats. She had a lot of hats. She was a civil rights activist, a priest, a lawyer, a lot of different things that she did in her.
I've never heard of her.
Yeah, it's like, and this cover was what struck me because I was like, who is this person, right? And when I read the synopsis on the back of the book, I instantly got the book because, like I said, for one, didn't know who she was, right? She has all of these friendships with people that everybody has heard of. Thurgood Marshall, Eleanor Roosevelt, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, among others, right? And she has such a crucial role. And the book goes into detail about how the Jane Crow name is a theory that she came up with about, well, a legal theory basically, that discrimination laws need to address women's issues just as much as they had addressed racial issues at that time. And that she also wrote the some legal articles that were used in the Brown versus Board of Education suit, that she had kind of a background role that supported some of those lawyers' arguments and so forth.
Well,
Yeah.
How fabulous that finally the book has come out to make her story known. It looks like it's probably quite recent.
Yeah, this came out in 2017.
Okay, yeah. So that's a tome, right?
No, it's
okay.
about
Everything's
300
relative.
pages.
Everything's relative.
Relative,
but yeah.
right.
that sounds fascinating.
They have a great documentary about her life too that came out this last 2021 called My Name is Pauli Murray. And they interviewed the author of this book. And there's two other books that I read after reading this one. So Patricia Bell Scott wrote a book called The Firebrand and the First Lady, which is about Pauli's friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt. And then I read a little small book of Pauli's poetry called Dark Testament, which is really good too.
Oh. God, I want to read all these books. This is fabulous. Do you have another one for us?
I got one more.
Oh, great. Oh, the timing is perfect. Yeah.
So my last one is, and I don't actually have it on me, but the title is Unceasing Militant by Allison Parker. And it's about the civil rights activist, suffragette Mary Church Terrell. Mm-hmm. And she preceded Jane Crow, Pauli Murray. She, I think, lived around I think she was born a little bit after or in the 1860s, I'll just say. And she lived into 1950s. I think she was about 90 years old. If I did my math correct, that's about, I think she was literally 90 when she died. That was a fascinating book too, of somebody I had heard of her before, but didn't know that much about her. So as I said before, she was a suffragette during the time of Alice Paul and that period when the 19th Amendment was being debated in the 1910s, 1920s. She was a founder, one of the few, I think, two female founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. She formed she was the president of the National Council of Negro Women. As I said, she had a moment where she protested, bus segregation. She just did a whole lot in her life. She was a actual, what they call in the States, a politico, where she was involved in partisan politics, campaigning for people. She did like opposition research on candidates, which I didn't think people did as much at that time as they do now. So it's a very fascinating book.
These suggestions are absolutely exactly the kind of suggestions that I was really hoping for. So you have outdone yourself. Do you have aspirations in the field of writing books like these?
I'll say I have had research interest on like some of my family genealogy, stuff like that. I do have, and this kind of connects to it, the Reconstruction thing, right? I do have a ancestor who was like a local Reconstruction leader back in the late 1860s.
Wow.
But he's not that well known because he was a local city person. And so I'm trying to find a lot of information, but I feel like there's not enough to like write a nonfiction book. But maybe if someone wrote a novel or something like that, would be,
someone named Raymond Williams, perhaps?
Maybe.
Oh, that's fascinating. Great. Well, Raymond, I'm going to be reading, I'm sure, at least one of these books this February and a whole bunch more next year for Black History Month. And my subscribers will have a lot of great stuff to choose from. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again.
I am looking forward to you coming back already.